How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions, and I am here with a land shark. No, I'm just kidding. It's Kelly Thompson, everybody. How are you, Kelly?
I'm great, Omar. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here because when you agreed to do this interview, it was before the Eisner nominations. So after you got the Eisner nominations, and how many were there again? Just out of curiosity.
I believe there were 5, Omar.
5 Oscar Eisner nominations. Slip of the tongue. Eisner nominations. I was like, oh, she's gonna cancel that interview. I got real people calling me now. I don't need to go on interview condition to talk about silly omnis. But thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about it. I've said, I'm going to say it for everyone listening because I said it before we started. I want to personally thank you for making Captain Marvel Omnibus Volume 1 better by recommending that they add Star into it and really you really upgraded it, in my opinion. And I don't even know if they would have listened to me because I'm no omnibus expert. You're the omnibus expert. So they listened to you and you made that book markedly better, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for writing it. And a lot of our viewers suggest things like that, and I just reach out to the people, and sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But in the case of Captain Marvel, they definitely said yes, and I was really happy to see that addition in there.
Yeah,
so
it's a gorgeous volume. It's a gorgeous volume. I can't wait for the second one.
Yeah.
They moved it, right?
They did move it. I'm waiting on a date.
November, maybe?
I think now the last I saw was January 2025, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna double check for that.
Well,
but now look, that you could be like, look, this is Kelly Thompson, 5 Eisner nominations. Kelly Thompson. Oh, I meant to ask you this before we started. You wrote Captain Marvel, and so did Kelly Sue DeConnick. Has there ever been a time when somebody confused both of you?
Constantly. It happens constantly.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Many times. And the great news is Kelly Sue and I know each other. So,
Okay.
It's like people call me her and I go, thank you so much. But you're looking for KSD. And then I'll see messages where she does the same. I'm sure it happens to me more than it happens to her. But yeah, there's definitely an overlap, which is fine. Like, you never want, I'm sure Kelly Sue is like, ugh, like, who are all these Kellys coming in here with my name? You never want to have the same name as people. It's fucking annoying. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be cussing. It's annoying.
Nobody can see your face.
Okay. They can hear my voice though, right?
They can definitely hear your voice, but that's okay. This is what happens when you get those 5 Eisner nominations. Whatever.
Anyway, so she, it's always annoying when someone comes in with your name or you go into an industry and someone really famous is already there in your name. See also my last name. How many Thompsons are there? But Kelly Sue, it's like, if you're going to have to be compared with another writer, I'll happily take it. Like, that's a great person to be confused with. And the good news is also, I mean, it probably makes more confusion for people, but like, we do have a lot of overlap in our titles. So, if people want to think I wrote Bitch Planet sometimes, I'd be delighted about that.
I don't know. Do you do like many convention appearances?
No, I don't do any live in-person stuff.
That's what I thought, but
yeah, it's a whole thing that I would love to change and move away from, but it's not going to happen immediately. It's we'll see. I don't know. I'm always hopeful that it's going to be a bit of a change, but even if I change it, I probably won't be showing up at big cons. I'd probably do some small cons and signings and stuff, but it's just too much for me. Like, I just can't physically, everything. I'm too reclusive. I have a bad knee. I have a bad back. So it's like a whole thing. And plus I've just avoided, I started out, because before I came into comics, I don't know if you call me a critic. I wasn't on staff or anything, but I was like a freelancer who wrote for Comics Should Be Good. I did reviews for CBR and Publishers Weekly. I wrote for the site Lit Reactor, and I got harassed like you would not believe. I mean, absolutely incredible levels of harassment. And so when I went into comics, I decided to try to protect myself a little more and just not expose myself to that. And I don't know. I regret it, I think, but it has afforded me some privacy that's been nice. But just the loss of the connecting with the fans and the community, like, more directly, I try to really do a lot of podcasts and be really engaged in a lot of ways. And I have a web store and I've got a Substack and I'm on social media and stuff. So I try to stay engaged, but I do feel that loss, especially when I hear fans talk about, or comic creators talk about really cool experiences with fans where they like can really tell that they like made a difference in someone's life with something they wrote for them, or, you know, it's pretty great.
Well, I will say in the chat right now, people are just loving your stuff. So there is that. That is really interesting that you decided to do that at the beginning of your comic book career, and yeah, good on you. That is your decision. Absolutely.
I mean, listen, it's
besides,
like
you can't get sick, right? Everybody goes.
Well,
like, see, that's why I don't do it.
It's funny when I was first doing it, I was like, you know, I was really worried about what publishers and editors would think. And I don't really know what publishers think, I guess, because they're a collective and not a human person. But most editors I encountered, they're like, listen, I'd rather your home writing, to be honest. Like, I know they want the promotion and we do all this stuff, but like, the scripts are really what we need. So they're like, we always like it when the writers stay home because they're always late. And that is 100% me. So, you know, I don't know. I feel mixed about it. But like the harassment when I was at Comics Should Be Good was really intense. And I was afraid of what would happen. As a creator, I thought I might be even more vulnerable. I think the reverse ended up being true, but I wasn't sure. And, you know, Comicsgate was in like full throttle sort of going after people. And it's like, you know, I just wanted to protect myself, but I feel mixed about it. I do see Ryan has asked me, and I feel like this will be a fun question to answer. He's asked how I did those alien cats. And I do believe edibles were involved. I was I was
okay.
not a lot. I don't typically write that way, but you know, I was having a lot of fun. A David Lopez script. It was a done in one, and I was looking for something like really fun that would be wacky and sort of comic booky. And yeah, it was for sure it was slight edible influence on those cats.
Okay, I love your honesty, man. Okay, maybe there is something to not having your face and just like out there, right? Maybe you got something going on with that, Kelly. Because all I can see now is just Jeff the Land Shark saying these things. Comes out really cute like that. Okay, we talked about Captain Marvel Omnibus. There's 2 volumes that are coming out.
Yes.
What out of your entire career, no matter what you wrote? Well, we're also getting your Image title that's getting a deluxe hardcover later on this year too.
What's that? What is?
Just let me double check because I know.
This is like dramatically embarrassing for the comic industry and how it works, but like really great about you, Omar. Look how on it you are. What do you know that I don't know about my own books?
Well, okay, I just want to make double check that I'm right. Now you got me second guessing myself. I'm usually really isn't the Cull getting a deluxe edition?
I mean, it could be. It certainly should. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's Eisner nominated. I know it's doing very well and it's international. Mattia went to I'm sorry to say I don't know which con it was, but in Italy for the debut, and he said he just had, this is like the kind of story I'm talking about. He said he just had a line of people all day. He was talking to people who were talking about the story, and he was drawing sketches for them all day. They sold out. It just sounded like an amazing day, and especially for someone like Mattia, who is, I know it seems insane that someone with that much talent is like also like just like a nice human being that you'd love to work with, but he's terrific. He's absolutely great.
Okay. I'm gonna double check that. James, are you here? James is my oracle. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
God, I wish I had an oracle who would solve so many problems.
Coming out later this year because I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna have to check that out then because I really like that art. Okay, we will come back to that.
Man, you get a lot of comments here. That's crazy. It's
really, I don't know. Sometimes I can't keep up. What are you writing?
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to talk to you, but I'm trying to read these comments too. It's pretty tough. You gotta have 2 sets of eyes, man.
You've been called a national treasure.
that might be
easily the most
exaggeration.
underrated writer of the past decade. Kate Bishop, Omnibus, Swin Omar. I love that you're asking me like I'm the one that gets to say that. What yeah, you never answered the question. What would you like to have in Omnibus format? Out of anything that you've written, anything.
Well, that first arc of Birds of Prey would look incredible. Truly. I hope we'll get that someday, maybe. I don't know how DC is with omnibuses compared to Marvel. Obviously, I'm pretty new there. But I think, gosh, so many good artists whose work would look so incredible. I mean, I think I'm inclined to say Black Widow. I just think it's such a tight, beautiful 15 issues. And I know we're getting the collected like floppy trade. So that's nice, especially because a lot of it's out of print, or people are telling me it's out of print and they can't find it. I'll give you my knee. I'll walk on a peg leg. I appreciate that. I'm also gonna need a new back. So I don't know if you have that to spare as well, but maybe we source that from someone else. So Black Widow would really be up there, but it is hard not to want that Hawkeye. And also I have to say the Jessica Jones. I mean, Madia's work is so cool on that Jessica Jones. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. I have a lot of faves. I've been very lucky. I was just talking to my partner about like my upcoming schedule. And I was like, you know, I wish I was working faster. Ever since the pandemic, I've been so slow. I've been pretty happy with the quality, but it takes about 3 times as long to get there. And it's very frustrating for me. And you've been volunteered, Omar.
I appreciate that.
So it takes me too long and it's frustrating, but I was just talking about how I think what my schedule, I'm just locking down a couple more books right now that I'm going to be doing over the next year. And it's like, it's an incredibly exciting schedule. But as I was talking to my partner about it, I was like, but honestly, I've really all the books I don't take something if I'm not interested in it. Like I don't ever go, let me see if I can find a way to be interested in this. Like I'm always interested in it. Like, and sometimes when I get in it, it turns out to be something different than I thought, but I always come to it because I think it'll be cool, you know? So I've always been lucky. DEADPOOL and Rogue and Gambit and Captain Marvel.
Oh, Rogue and Gambit. That's another series that needs a bigger format too.
I do think that is probably one of my most popular things just because people are so fanatical about those characters. And especially with the show.
I was about to ask you, but I also didn't want to spoil it.
I actually haven't watched it. We lost our Disney Plus subscription and our Apple subscription at the same time, and I just haven't renewed them yet because I've been so busy. I thought I'll just leave it, and then it'll be a nice reward for when I get through these scripts. But so I haven't seen it yet, but I have definitely been seeing the chatter. And I've seen a lot of clips. It seems pretty incredible. But yes, people are talking about it so much. And so many people are very nicely pointing people to Rogue and Gambit and to Mr. and Mrs. X. But it does sort of seem like a no-brainer to do some trades here on this because people have trouble finding Rogue and Gambit issues and the Mr. and Mrs. X trades. So
I'm just saying that would also make a nice omnibus. It's got some solid artwork. I've already mapped it out.
You could put it all together? What would you call it? I wonder if you put the Rogue and Gambit with, and then like Uncanny Gold, I guess 30 you'd put in.
Oh,
and then Mr. and Mrs. X.
Are we mapping an omnibus right now? Because holy crap. Let me get my buddy Peter on here. We'll map that omnibus.
Well, because that's a good size, right? It's like 17 issues. That's pretty good. So, no, 18. One of them is oversized if you include the Uncanny.
And you can have your gold. Anything that you wrote for X-Men, I think would be in there, and it would make a nice oversized hardcover. Absolutely. But honestly, it would be a good omnibus. I mean, these days, 15 issues sometimes is coming out as an omnibus. You've got like the Hulk by Donny Cates. I think it's like 15 or so issues, and that's it.
Yeah.
So just saying, your run is actually a lot longer. So
yeah, that would work.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
I would be very happy to map that for you. Me, you, and Peter will map that for you and ship it over to Marvel Comics. You know, honestly, you could even do like no, I don't want to put your DEADPOOL run in there because Deadpool deserves its own thing. See, that's what I worry about, like the Marvel Universe by Kelly Thompson, because there's just so many things that I think should stand on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I got to touch enough things that makes sense. I
Well,
just
I was
think
thinking,
Rogue and Gambit, I definitely touched enough. You could, I don't like that one issue of Deadpool. It would be fun to put in there because it's so Krakoa focused and it's such a great little issue and it has a great Rogue and Deadpool moment. But I think it would be discordant inside, right?
okay, so for example, like I think, where would I have put the Avengers West Coast by Kelly Thompson?
Mm.
Right. And
Well,
eventually
I would put that in the Hawkeye, wouldn't you?
right. That's exactly what I would do too. But they did put it in another omnibus too. What was it? It was
I mean, most of my experience with the West Coast Avengers and the Hawkeye stuff has been them breaking it up into the smaller digest size, which I've thought were really cool. I really enjoyed those. I think my only complaint about those is that it causes a lot of confusion for people. Like I'll get people emailing me and then I'm spending time like,
thank you all. It's in the Gwenpool omnibus. Look at that.
Yeah.
Can anybody double check the Cull deluxe edition? I could have sworn I saw it.
I love that you're crowdsourcing this. It's amazing.
It's what I have to do sometimes. Plus, they love proving me wrong, so it's actually kind of a thing. All right, look, see, James is on it. I can't find any new deluxe HC for Black Cloak or the Cull. Well, there goes any kind of credibility I had out the window.
No, you just are ahead. You know it's coming. It must come.
Maybe I'm just beating them to the punch to announce
there you go.
That's what it was. Thank you guys so much for looking. I knew it was in an omnibus and I couldn't remember what, but it was because of the character of Gwenpool that's in the West Coast Avengers. Yeah. So even though it would be double dipping, it absolutely would belong in your Hawkeye.
Yeah, I think Hawkeye plus West Coast Avengers would be a great omnibus. I guess that's the reason I would say that I would keep Jessica Jones lower because it's not as many issues. Although
I think there's enough in that too. Absolutely.
I think it's 10 to 12, isn't it? Because there's 6-issue arcs, I think. So yeah, it's 12. Yeah,
we could make that happen. All right. So lots of Marvel work. You got some stuff at DC going on. But you've also written some stuff like Sabrina. And you've written some stuff like Mega Princess, which my daughter actually, when was Mega Princess?
It was like 2017. It was, it came out like the week of the election.
So 20. Oh, 16. Wow. I remember
I was like,
it's like celebration.
Who cares about this now? Everything's on fire. It was a bummer.
But it still came out. Did you want to do your own storybook? Like a kid's comic like that?
Yeah.
Or do you still want to?
I do still want to. I had hoped that would be a big success and we could do more. I had a whole other arc that I hoped we would do. Some interesting people have circled around it for adapting it a few times. I think it's a no-brainer to adapt. It would make a perfect cartoon. It's so flexible and bendy. You could do almost anything with it as a comic or a cartoon. So yeah, I love it. I think it didn't look at that. Man, they are good, James. 11/9/2016.
Yeah, James is on it. I'm serious. When I said he's my oracle, like I mean like
so I think that I can't remember what I was saying.
We were talking about the Mega Princess.
I just think I don't know. Comics are incredibly hard to market. I think I could certainly do better with it now. I've got a bigger audience. I've done a lot of. I also think that Mega Princess was the first thing I did that wasn't for adults or for teens and up or whatever. It was the first YA thing I really did or middle grade thing. And I've done a lot of Jeff now. I'm doing It's Powerpuff Girls. So I feel like maybe there's a little more of an audience there. It's like my people who follow me and support me and talk about my stuff. I think they're a little more in sync with it. So it might do better today than it would then.
What do you call your people? The Kelly Thompson fans?
I don't know. I'm not as cool as Donny Cates. They don't have a name.
Donny Cates give them names. I really don't know. I was just making that.
Or maybe they gave them. I'm sure they gave themselves the name, but aren't they called something like the advocates or something. I swear,
Advocate. Ooh,
I'm
that's witty. I like that.
I'm sure I've seen that.
You're a
One
bit
of
of
these people on your sidebar is gonna know. I'm sure of it.
you're a bit of a wordsmith yourself. Perhaps you can come up with something just as good and
honestly,
clever. The Cult
honestly,
of Kelly, right? Right?
I'm not very good at puns and things. I remember
Really?
Matt Rosenberg. I was asking him for help on one of my Deadpool issues because I had this snowman character who only talks in puns and cold puns.
Mhm.
And man, I was just tapped out. And so he came up with this perfect one so fast. And I was like, that's it. That's the one. And someone called it out on Twitter. They're like, my God, this joke. And I was like, I have to like offer it up. That is 100% Matt Rosenberg. I am not strong. My pun game is not super
You
strong.
gave credit where credit was due.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like a little bit. I don't usually like to gender things too much, but I wonder if that's a gender thing a little bit. I feel like boys at a certain age spend a lot of time punning things and like
Mhm.
riffing and like, sort of insulting each other, but like in a jokey thingy way. And I think maybe girls at that time, I mean, we're speaking in full senses. You guys are still struggling. So, it's fair, but
Oh, wait a minute.
but it means our pun game is sometimes weak.
Oh man. Yeah, you always hear of like dad jokes, right? Like dad
Yeah,
jokes,
yeah,
dad kind
yeah.
of puns. And I try not to be like that dad, right? Like
Well,
I try, but
I do
there's
think
just some moments that I'm like,
yeah,
that's just too good of an opportunity.
I think Carol Danvers has a sort of dad jokes kind of sense of humor. Like she's not like genuinely funny like the way Spider-Woman is to
Yeah,
me.
Kyle, right? That's what I was thinking. Kyle puns are called dad jokes, not mom jokes. So you
See?
may be onto
See?
something.
See? I know what I'm talking about.
I came for the Kelly support. I stayed for the sexism. I love it. I did. There honestly, there could be something true to that because my wife says the same thing, and maybe that's just her way of saying I'm not as smart.
I mean, I might just be turning it into a male female thing where it doesn't exist. But most of my colleagues are males, and I feel
Mhm.
like most of them are better at puns than me. And I feel like I like missed that class or something.
I don't think it's a
Anyway.
class. I think it just comes with time, right? I think it just comes.
Are you sure? Are you sure when they usher us out to tell us about our bodies, they're not teaching you about
I don't know
puns
what was going
instead?
on over there. I always wanted to sneak out and go on that side, by the way. But then that might have traumatized me. I don't know if that would have worked. It might have been like sounded like a cool 80s movie plot, but probably in hindsight, not as cool. So you've worked on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. You worked on Nancy Drew. Were you fan of those series? Like whenever you got involved with the projects?
I am. I am. Archie is really the first. That's how I learned to read comics, were Archie Digest. So I've always had a lot of love for Archie. And Sabrina is like, let's be real, like the coolest of the Archies. She's a fucking witch.
Mhm.
And witch stuff is always cool. So I was into that. Sabrina is also like, I wasn't a big fan of that show from the 90s. Like that wasn't really for me, but you've got a talking cat and magic, and you've got a girl who's a teenager, but she's also sort of a superhero and she's struggling with dual identity. Like, what's not to love? It's great stuff. Raised by her aunts. I mean, our Sabrina isn't as dark as the show. Like, I feel like
The Netflix
it,
Sabrina?
yeah, or
Mhm.
any of those like thrilling tales, which is incredible. I love it. But it's like when we're putting the house next to the cemetery and we're implying we eat the dead, like that's a whole other level. Like that's sort of not what we're doing. My Sabrina is a little more like my Hawkeye, where it's a little lighter, it's a little more like I'm not saying there aren't consequences or stakes or tension. There are, but it's not played quite so dark, I think. And I would say it's a similar approach to how I took on Nancy Drew, which is I don't think I'm the Nancy Drew super fan, but I like Nancy Drew. It was some formative reading for me. And like, what's not to like? Again, she's a detective. These are my favorite things. She's a high school student who's also a detective. She's really good at it, so good at it that her fatal flaw is she doesn't let anyone help her. So it's like, it's great. I'm into all these things.
When I was in elementary school, I would read the Hardy Boys, and I found out that there were like other detective books that the library had, and they were Nancy Drew. So I started checking them out. Then I found out that there were crossovers, and as a kid that liked comics, like my mind kind of blew.
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
That's
Nancy, these are real people. These aren't comic book characters. How can they cross over?
That's great. That's great.
This is a really good question. Thank you so much, Matt, for the super chat. Kelly, you are such a dope and talented creator. If you were to only give one of your stories that encapsulates Kelly Thompson, what would it be? I love when they're putting you on the spot, not me. Usually they ask me these questions.
Man.
You as the creator and the writer, yeah, what's the one book?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know if I can answer that. I mean, in a way, I think I have to say Story Killer, which isn't a comic. That's a novel I wrote, and I think that's the closest I got to putting like the things I'm interested in, the kind of stories I'm trying to tell. Like that's probably the most complete picture. But it's pretty dated. That came out in 2014, so literally 10 years ago. And so much has happened for me as a writer since then. So I think it's hard to say Story Killer, but I do think, because saying it's a comic means I also have to it means I feel like I'm onboarding the art into that question too. But like, am I more Birds of Prey, Leo Romero, or am I more Madia the Cull, or am I more Black Cloak with Meredith? Like all those feel like me. And so it's hard to say one is more me than the other.
What is this novel you speak of? Like, are there pictures in these things?
There are actually both.
Look at that, Matt.
Yeah, both novels have sections of pictures, and because I'm a comic book person, they're mostly by comic book artists. So The Girl Who Would Be King has a section of full color illustrations. The cover of that book is by Stephanie Hahn. The interior illustrations are by Stephanie Hahn and Meredith McLaren. And is there Sophie Campbell? There's Sophie Campbell in there as well. Story Killer has tons of artists, has a whole section. The cover is also by Stephanie Hahn, and she did some interior illustrations, but it's also got, gosh, I'm going to miss some people, but Sophie Campbell, Stacey Lee, Declan Shalvey, Chris Anka, Brett Weldall. Gosh, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just blanking on everyone's name. Ben Caldwell, Noel Stevenson, now Nate N.D. Stevenson, did a piece. So really incredible people. It's super fun. You can get it free with Unlimited, James, but I don't think those versions have the illustrations.
Look at that, James.
Yeah, the illustrations are only in the Josh, James, name all the artists. Illustrations.
I bet James can do it.
The illustrations are only in the hardback, I believe. Although there might be a digital edition that has them, but I don't think it has everything.
You just mentioning Sophie Campbell reminded me that we only got one Gem in the Holograms collection. It was like the Trapper Keeper collection that IDW released, and I was so disappointed that there wasn't anything else after that. They were released in trade, but they were coming out with these wonderful editions. It was when Transformers, like these back here, were coming out. It was when G.I. Joe was coming out in an oversized hardcover. And I was like, oh, Jam's going to get this. Is like my childhood. And then we only got one.
Yeah, it was a bummer. I'm actually not sure why they didn't do more, because that book was pretty successful. But I do think maybe it just, by the time it came time to do a second collection, maybe it was the heat of it was coming off of it a little bit. Hey, nice. Copy 523. Thanks.
Oh, yes, this is my buddy Peter, who absolutely loves you, like loves your work. Has been on he has been a Kelly Thompson pusher for years, like long before like I heard anybody say your name.
I think Peter knows me all the way going back to The Girl Who Would Be King, I think. Which was my first novel back in 2012. So yeah. Really, really great to have someone like follow you all that time and like not give up on you, because you're swinging and missing sometimes, you're swinging and hitting other times, you're switching genres, you're moving from comics to novels, it's like a crazy thing. So for someone to stay with you all that time, it means a lot. Every tour video, Melanie thinks it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
real trapper
My
keeper.
wife films my tour videos, and she thinks it's a real trapper keeper, and she gets so disappointed when she opens it up and like, it's not a real trapper keeper. Oh, here. Oh, look, this isn't James, but Peter's got you.
Yeah.
Here's
There we
all
go.
of the, or some of the artists, not even all of the artists that are in the book. Look at this, all the way back to CBR, Kelly. Happy
Yeah.
to read everything you write.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Someone is asking me about, I think they've asked it twice now.
Wow, you're doing a better job than I am keeping
About, well, I feel bad. I feel bad if they're asking it again because it makes me feel like we missed it or something. But they're asking me if Cloverfield was an inspiration for the Cull, and not really. I mean, it might have been for Madia a little bit, but it wasn't anything I put in the references. I think the reference I used for the creatures was, do you guys remember the what were they called? Striders in Dark Crystal?
Dark Crystal? The long-legged?
Yeah, with the bunny ears and things, like those big. So like that was the place I started from. There's a really cool book that's got a lot of great illustrations from the Dark Crystal. It's really beautiful. So I think it was some of those references I pulled. But I totally see the Cloverfield connection. I think how could you not, with a kind of giant creature like that, and using sort of the video camera POV we used for some of it when the kids get back and see that everything's fucked up, they watch the video camera. And so like that definitely gives it some Cloverfield vibes too. I get that.
All right, real important question, Kelly. Claremont or Wolfman? I'm not sure if they're in a mud fight.
Yeah, I mean,
what we're talking about, but you're the one with the imagination and writing ability, so you decide what
let's see. Claremont is certainly incredibly fundamental to my reading from the 80s and 90s, X-Men stuff particularly. But Wolfman was never mean to me at a Comic-Con, so maybe Wolfman, I don't know.
He has, huh?
It's not a big deal. I shouldn't say anything about it. I said it on one other cast, and now I always feel like talking about it. It's my brother and I was young. I was like 17. It was the first Comic-Con I'd ever gone to, San Diego Comic-Con, before it was the thing it is now. It was a much more modest sort of a situation. And my little brother and I went, and, we had just discovered X-Men comics like maybe 2 years before. And so we were fanatical about it. We were as crazy as you could be about comics. And he wasn't writing X-Men anymore at that point. He was writing that Sovereign something, the Sovereign, I don't know.
Oh, Sovereign 7 for DC?
Yes.
With Dwayne Turner?
Well, no, was that what it was?
Yeah,
I thought it was a creator-owned thing. He was.
It was, but it was one of those agreements that it's Chris Claremont. He's not like with his huntsman on.
He has different roles, right?
Yeah.
So even though we didn't like that book, we dutifully bought it and brought it with us to have it signed. And he was very grouchy about signing the X-Men comics. I try not to hold that against someone because who knows what's happened to him that day or any day. But he is very crotchety in every fucking interview I read, which makes me wonder if that was just a normal day.
I have interviewed a lot of creators, and a lot of them were my childhood heroes. And much like what you said earlier, you never know when somebody's having a bad day. But I think, I don't know, maybe it's the older I get to, the more I really enjoy curmudgeons. Keith Giffen considered himself one because there is like a lot of heart. Like I consider like Don Rosa one of my favorite creators of all time, a big curmudgeon. Like other people would be like, I don't want to talk to that guy. I don't need anybody like that in my life. For me, I'm like, that is my type of dude. Like I like that. And I have a very similar experience with John Byrne when I was a kid. And John Byrne, of course, known throughout the comics industry as the bad boy of comics and now I don't even know if he deals with anything Marvel or DC. But when I was a kid, the first time I ever met him was at this Mid-Ohio Con, and he was just signing, and there was a kid in front of me with a stack of comics, and he was signing the comics. The kid was about 8 years old, and I was 12, not much older, but he's signing the comics, and he's not even making eye contact with the kid. He's just whatever. He's a pro. John Byrne, John Byrne, John Byrne, John Byrne, all day, every
Mhm.
day. And then he gets to one comic and he says, "Not me," and he throws it. Like he he throws it into the ground and he does it again.
Of
He
an
keeps signing it and he's
8-year-old?
like, "Not me." And he keeps signing it and not me. And the little kid is like picking up. And I was like, that is both the most meanest and most badass thing I've ever seen.
I mean, listen, that's badass if you do it to an adult, especially
I
an
know.
adult who's maybe being a dick. But that's not okay to do to an 8-year-old. I mean, what the
But
fuck,
when
man?
people go on about how John Byrne is just so mean, I'm like, dude, John Byrne was an angry old man when he wasn't an angry old man. Like he was just John Byrne. That's just the way he always was.
Listen, who knows what happened to Chris Claremont that day? It wasn't really that bad. My memory has made it worse than it is. I've never had a professional, we pass ships in the night sometimes, but I've never actually had a conversation with the man. He's entitled to whatever he wants with all he's given us, right? I mean, well, whatever he wants within reason.
Within reason?
I just mean he can be a dick. Like, don't hurt people or don't, break consent laws and shit. But if you want to be a dick, you've earned it. Like, you did a lot for these comics, and I'm sure it wasn't always easy, and I'm sure it's hard to live in the weird sort of prison that's been created around him, right? Where he's like, I mean, I don't know what this is, but everyone says he's paid on a retainer to just like not do books. And if that's true, I feel like that would mess with your head a little bit. I mean, on one hand, like how wonderful to be able to have that kind of security. Most of us will be dying on the streets, I'm sure, if our GoFundMe doesn't work out. So it's nice to have that. But also, if you're a badass writer, it feels weird. People paying you not to write. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that. So, he's entitled to whatever feelings he has about things.
So you crossed paths with him at that time, and that's what you remembered, right? Like that's forever.
Well,
Like,
yeah, it's my 17-year-old brain. And like my
Mhm.
brother was younger. He was like 14 or 15 about. So I don't know. I felt protective of him that this guy that we thought was the greatest thing since sliced bread was so mean. But again, it's a split second in his day many years ago. Like I can't hold him accountable for that. I just think it's interesting. Here's the lesson. I try to be really careful in how I treat people and I also try to be really careful in the work I put out, because sometimes that interaction someone has with you is the only one they have to form an opinion of you. Sometimes people only read one thing before they decide, oh, that writer is not for me or is for me. So I just try to take that thing that happened and like be cognizant of it in my own life as much as I can. But let's be real. I don't even go to cons. So he's one up on me. Like I'm not even subjecting myself to that. So how dare I sort of have an opinion about it,
wow, you are conducting your own interview. You're doing a better job than I am. You're asking all these hard questions and answering them.
Listen, you gotta interrogate yourself, especially if you're a reclusive writer.
Yeah, it's like I'm witnessing a therapy session with a land shark. But like, I love Chris Claremont. I have followed him for years, and not in a stockish kind of way. Although my first interaction with him was kind of creepy. Like not from him, but from me. Totally, I was shaking his hand, and my brother was like taking pictures, and I don't think I could let go of his hand. That's like it was like in Titanic, like the scene in Titanic. And my brother, as soon as I get out, I was like, that was creepy, wasn't it? Was that creepy? And he was like, oh, dude, that was totally creepy. You held onto his hand and you did not want to let go of his hand. And yeah, but he still agrees to come on like interviews with me.
That's
and,
awesome.
We talk and I ask him one question and he takes an hour to answer. And I love that. I love hearing Claremont talk. But I've never had a bad interaction. I've had bad interactions with other creators, and
yeah, I mean,
some of them aren't old. Some of them are old. Some of them are young and just starting. And
I mean,
I never say who, and I never will. It's just that.
Oh, I've seen some incredibly bad behavior, and I don't even go to cons. So it's like it's for sure out there. Again, I think the lesson the thing that I try to remember about the Claremont story is anyone can have a bad day, and I don't want them having a bad day in their interaction with me. A guy recently emailed me to ask me a question because he couldn't find a out of print something that I wrote. And I sent him this huge email back with all these suggestions of places he could look or blah, blah, blah. And he was like, he replied, and I felt like a loser for a minute. And then I was like, nah, that was the right thing to do, because he replied to me and he was like, I can't even believe you replied, let alone you wrote all this stuff and gave me links and stuff. He's like, and he's right. That's probably not what I should be doing with my time. I can assure you, I have editors who are like, why are you doing that with your time? So whatever. But that's my experience with that guy. And that person is probably going to be more likely to think about reading my work and telling other people about my work because he had a good experience with me. And I don't know. So I'm just really cognizant of that stuff.
I think that's a really good, like if you're watching this now, I think that is a really good takeaway from this interview is anybody can have a bad day and you can have a bad experience, because we do live in an era of like, well, not anymore, but there were like Vine videos, right? Or shorts where you can lose somebody's attention within seconds, right? And it's not like you're even hearing the whole thing out.
Yeah.
You're just hearing like little snippets. And that has happened too, where snippets are being played left and right. I can't believe I left that Claremont or Wolf up there for that long. Moving on, we move on. We're going to move on to Hawkeye. This is from my buddy Peter asking this question at the point you took over Kate Bishop. You haven't really done a solo adventure outside of the issues of Fractions Hawkeye. She hadn't. How did you, Kelly Thompson, find a voice for her to make her distinct? And how did you feel about when that voice showed up so distinctly on the character in the MCU?
So I'm happy that people think that's my voice or a version of my voice on Kate. I do think it's true, but I picked that up from Matt Fraction 100%. To me, he was writing her two ways on purpose. I have not gone over this with Matt, so this is all just my theory, not confirmed. My take when I read those is that the ones that are with Aja that are in New York have a very different Kate. And I think that's Clint's POV of Kate. Sort of, that's why she comes off that way. But when you go to those detective-y LA ones drawn by Annie Wu, she's much wackier and weirder and messier and not together. And I think that's more Kate's POV of herself, because she's more in that. And so that was the one I ran with, because that's the one that fits what we were doing. And I just leaned in. I just leaned into what he was doing, and just, it helped that I had Leo and Jordy, who are so good. They could just see what I was trying to do with sort of her sassiness and her private detective stuff. But it was all inspired by what he had done there.
This is a good question from James. Did you have any input on the Jeff the Shark animated shorts? Jeff and the Avengers.
This is going to be a soundbite. Okay. I wrote all of those, but I did not. What can I say? What can I say here that's not going to get me in too much trouble, but that's still honest? I didn't really like the audio elements. I struggled with that. It's nobody's fault who was involved. Everyone did a really good job. I have trouble with these motion comics things. I don't really like them that much, but I thought it was worth it trying to do the Jeff ones when I knew Marvel wanted to do it, because I figured, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. And this is my best shot to sort of control Jeff and the way he's being used. So I decided to do it, even though I don't really have an affection for the Marvel, for the motion comic stuff. And so maybe that's on me. Maybe I didn't understand it enough or didn't take to it enough. Maybe my scripts weren't good enough, but I don't think they really feel like Jeff the way he feels in the comics. And the way I would hope he would feel if he ever shows up in a animation or a movie or something. The voice and the audio elements I don't really like. I also don't know why he's on his hind legs all the time. Like, he doesn't walk, but so I wasn't that involved after the script part, like a little bit, and everything they were doing was good, but it didn't gel for me. And I don't know if that's that they're not good, or that I I don't really respond to the motion comics. So I don't know. I guess people's mileage will vary, but I have to say I saw very few people reaching out to me about them. And I think that for readers, or viewers, they were a little discordant with the Jeff they'd come to know. I mean, that's how it was for me. So that's just a guess, but
okay. Thank you so much for your honest answer.
It was not a great experience, but that just happens sometimes. It's not not trying to throw anyone under the bus or be a jerk. Everyone came to work and did their job, and it's just sometimes it doesn't quite work out the way you want. And they might be super happy with them. We haven't really talked about it since they came out, but I didn't find them to be super what I was hoping for. So
so I have a question before we go, because there's a lot of questions in the chat. Just looking at this background, there's a lot of female characters in the background. Do you, when you're approached to write a comic, like, is it usually female-led comics, like women, or like for let's use Deadpool, because Deadpool's the one that's here in the background. Like, was that hey, we need a Deadpool comic, here's a list of some creators that we can work with? Is that how that happens, or is it something that you pitch? Like, I have a Deadpool story, I think it would be really cool.
They offered me Deadpool, and I was super excited about it. Sorry, I had to cough.
Okay.
They offered me Deadpool, and I was super excited about it. King Deadpool was sort of the second pitch, I guess, that Jake and I did, the editor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I coughed again. I think the first thing we tried to do was like a really fun, weird team up that was sort of like a Seven Samurai kind of a concept, where he's like gathering up heroes, and like one of the bits was that he was going to bring Spider-Man on because he was like promising him that was like a really A-list team, and then it was just all these D-listers, and Spider-Man was like, what? And anyway, it was very fun, but it just didn't have the legs. And the King Deadpool thing became very rich very fast when I hit on that, and when Jake and I started developing it. But I think one of the many reasons I was excited for Deadpool was it was the first time I was given like a male headlining character.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really think, I think me doing so many female-led books is two things. I think it's I'm a woman and they don't have enough women. And so they're anxious to put women on women-led titles when they have them. So it's just natural. And I don't think they're wrong to do that. I think they should hire more women, but so that doesn't have to be a thing. But I think that it's also that I just like women. I'm drawn to the female characters. I'm equally as interested in Kate Bishop as I am Clint Barton. I am more interested in Carol Danvers than I am in, I don't know,
Genesville.
Sure. Yeah, sure. To keep it in the venue. Yeah, absolutely. I'm more interested in Scarlet than I am in, well, not Snake Eyes. We're all interested in Snake Eyes, right? But Duke, I'm more interested in Scarlet than I am in Duke or Flint or
Duke and Flint are like, yeah.
I mean,
but Snake Eyes.
I mean, Snake Eyes is pretty hard to beat. I think we all know that. That's so it's just sort of a natural thing. I'm more interested in the Birds of Prey than, a lot of male dominated teams. It's just a thing that I gravitate toward. And if I can help like raise some of them up into some cool books, get Carol a 50-issue run, get Black Widow and Eisner win, like I'm excited about that, because these are great characters that shouldn't be on the sidelines just because they're not dudes. So I was really excited when I got Deadpool and that it opened things up maybe. Mm-hmm. And then that sort of hasn't happened after the fact. I don't know if it's because the Deadpool run wasn't super popular, which I blame partially on things are hard and partially on the pandemic. But I think that it didn't happen that I just started getting a lot of dude offers, but I didn't feel bad about that. I mean, I don't want to be held back and not be allowed to do like big events and big, I don't know, this event that spins out of Iron Man or whatever. Like, I don't want to be told I can't do that. But at the same time, I'm good at this other thing. So there's nothing wrong with that. And I like being there. It's fun.
And the reason I asked that, I asked like that was an issue that Christopher Priest had. Like Christopher Priest was, you know, when there weren't a lot of black writers in comics, he was given black characters, and he was like, I want to write Superman.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool that you're giving me all these other characters, but I'd like to write Superman. It's almost like he was shoehorned into writing these stories that he didn't want to do. And I was curious if you had approached, you know, about these characters, or if the editors or whomever approached you about writing these characters. Yeah, we had Louise writing Man of Steel for years, and she wrote an amazing run.
And Nocenti on Daredevil, and like there's incredible examples of it. But I think the problem is, it's weird. There just aren't enough women. There aren't enough people of color. There aren't enough women. There aren't enough gay people. And when you don't have enough diversity in the room, it means that those people get assigned to the books that look like them. And that's not a bad thing, because those people probably do have a slightly more, you know, lived take on those. But what really needs to happen is there needs to be enough diversity that that's not how they get assigned. That the right book gets assigned to the right person, and sometimes it corresponds and sometimes it doesn't. It's the same way that you don't like creating a bisexual supervillain when there's no bisexual positive representation. And then you get into this bad loop where you only get good bisexual people, as if there's no nuance to that, because you're like, oh, we need positive portrayals of bisexual people, and there's no room for bisexual villains, even though they might be amazing. And so it's with more diversity that you can get all of this stuff, but you have to have the people in place, and you have to have all these things happening in order to diversify your line that way. And until you have those bodies that you can put on those books that are more diverse, you're going to keep running into the same problem, which is women on female books, Black people writing Black-led books, gay people writing pride books. And those are all steps we need to be taking, but it just feels like it's taking too long to get to the next step, where everything is a little more diversified and, you know, a little less the way it feels now.
So this is out of my own curiosity, you mentioning there's not enough women, not enough diversity. When you say that, like, do you mean in the writing pool? Because I really don't know how it works, right? Like, or do you mean like, does DC have a list? Does Marvel have a list of writers that they can get, and who's on that list? Like, I don't really understand how that works.
I mean, I don't staff books. I'm not a publisher. I only know it from the freelancer side. I don't really know how it works beyond I've been in like writer summits and stuff, and you know, there just aren't enough diverse people in those rooms. And listen, it's a hard conversation to have, because I love most of those people that if you're saying we're going to diversify, that means a lot of people have to go, and a lot of people are my friends, and they're very talented and they're qualified. So I'm not suggesting it all has to be this way. I'm just saying this is why you see it over and over. This is why Kelly Thompson gets put on girl books, quote unquote, all the time. This is why Christopher Priest get put on Black books. It's frustrating experience, but I'm not sure what the right thing to do would be. So I'm writing Captain America now, and a dude is writing Captain Marvel. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. I don't want people pigeonholed into these things, but at the same time that I don't want people pigeonholed and only allowed to write things that are their lived experience, I also want to see more diversity across the board in the books and in the creators. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. If I had the solution, we wouldn't have this problem. So I could just let people know the solution, and it would be problem solved. But there isn't an easy one. These things take time. They're frustrating. A lot of people get crunched in the middle of it. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, I've seen things from like both angles, right? Like give people the people with the right ability to write these characters, give them the chance, or people that meet certain criteria, give them the chance to write these particular characters. It is a very interesting topic, and honestly one that Yeah, would take hours to go through.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
don't
just
know if you're right. I don't think there is an actual answer to these things
yeah,
because it is
there's
at the end of the day, it's unfortunately, not up to you or any of the writers, right? It's up to whoever's running these things.
yeah, but I mean, even that is hard because like where does the buck stop? I don't know. I don't know what that is, I just think yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you diversify it. No, I can't tell that story. Nope. I think I get an email if I tell that story. I'm not going to. I just think my experience of comics thus far has been an incredibly positive one in the sense that almost everyone I've met within comics, and we can expand it to, emails and such too, since I've mostly only met Marvel people in person. They all just really love comics. They're all really good people. Like I've met very few monsters, especially when you're talking about editors and like boots on the ground people who are just trying to make the books. And so I think that I don't know. I guess the answer is this stuff takes time, but I'm unsatisfied by that answer like many people are, because how much time? Like how long do I have to wait? How long does so and so have to wait for the door to open or for there to be more of this, And unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, things are only going to get worse because, now AI is a part of this. And, I want to believe comics will be a little bit protected from this because there's not as much money in comics. And that sometimes protects us from some of the more nefarious things. Because there's not as much money in comics, you tend to really find people making comics who love comics. They're in it because they love comics, not because they're hoping to make $1 million. It's great when they do. It sometimes happens, but it's not the primary driver. So,
You bringing up AI really brings up like that's another door.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to.
How do you even protect yourself as a writer?
You don't.
Artist?
It's terrifying, and I'm just saying, like that's going to constrict things further, not open them up. So, if you're a young writer who's a diverse person, a woman or a person of color, LGBT, who's trying to break in and who's trying to make themselves known and make a voice, it's really hard and it's constricting even further at a time when it feels like, oh, great, we're going to open this up as much as possible. The industry is very tough. It has always been, but I think it's particularly tough right now as someone who did both work for hire and creator own last year. It's a tough market. And when you've got AI constricting that even further, it's hard to ask people to just wait for it to get better. Well, what are the things I can do? I mean, the only things you can do if you're someone who wants to get known, who believes you have talent in this business, and especially if you're a person who is a diverse person who thinks you're maybe not getting a shot because you're not the right whatever shape format they want you to be, the only thing you can do is make your own books and show them. Because that is how they call you. That is how the bigger companies find you and call you, is when you start doing work with someone else that's quality work. Because let me tell you what, the big companies are desperate for good people. They really hunt to find the right people for a job, but like they're afraid to put they're afraid to put small creators on a big book unless they've got history, unless they know they can handle it, unless they've got experience. There have to be these things for them to see. They don't just hand you Iron Man. So you've got to show them the ways in which you can do it. And if you can make an incredible book at a smaller company or on your own, like that's how I got the door open for me. It was Gem. That was it.
That's a really interesting take on like how to get to the big two. Because I think for a lot of people that read comics, much like yourself when you were younger, is one day I want to write X-Men, one day I want to write Batman, whatever it is, right? Fill in the blank. And it seems like nowadays, when people do that, when writers do that, some of them get big enough because of writing X-Men, because of writing Batman, because of writing whatever, that readers will start following the names. Like I think of like Ed Brubaker. Like Ed Brubaker came in and wrote Captain America and Daredevil and X-Men. And he had been writing comics long before that, but I think those 3 comics, mainly Captain America, which of course they borrowed heavily for the movies, gave him that name that people were like, oh, this guy's good. I'm going to follow his stuff. And now he doesn't have to write for Marvel and DC. I don't know if he wants to or not, or if he ever will. But I've seen a lot of creators do that from time to time. And it's really interesting to say, like, you know, hearing you talk about trying to get into or being noticed by the big 2 is doing your own thing that makes you stand out.
Yeah.
So how do you feel now where you are at a point in this life of yours as a writer? Because you're doing Substack, you're doing creator-owned stuff, but you're still doing things like Birds of Prey. Like, how does that feel? Like,
I mean, last year was a really hard year for me because making creator-owned books, it was the first time I'd ever done it on my own, and it was really hard. I was very proud of what we did, but it was really hard. It took way more out of me than I thought, and it left me sort of taking my foot off the gas on other work for hire and other things. And so financially, I had a really hard year, and that made me feel like, God, that made me feel like such a failure. I mean, honestly, it's why the Eisner nominations feel so redemptive to me right now, is because I had such a hard financial year. So I don't know what the answer is. I think for me, a blend of creator owned and work for hire would be ideal, but it's pretty hard to imagine. I don't know. It's pretty hard to imagine keeping that up at that pace. Like, I believe I'm getting better at it after that really hard year. So I think I'm going to have a better job of integrating the 2 things and following that path. But it's tricky. It's not easy, man. I feel it's like a tight wire a little bit, being a freelancer and like juggling this stuff. Like I said, I think some things are aligning for me that are really great. But I don't know, it can go awry really easily. Like, I feel like last year I felt like nothing was happening for me until the fall, even though I was working so hard and everything was going so great, until Birds of Prey like really started hitting and things. I felt like, man, if I just has doing this creator owned stuff, I'm just like not in the conversation now. And so that made me feel really anxious about it. Like, I know that it sounds stupid to, when you've got 5 Eisner noms, to be worried about your career, but I'm always going to worry about my career. It's not a stable industry. I can be replaced at any time. It's, there's no 401k, there's no health insurance, you're really out on a limb. It's like, I'm a very risk averse person. My career is the only place where I take risks, and I have to be conservative in every other, not conservative, let's not use that word. I have to be risk averse in every other area of my life, because this career is dangerous. It's not a career. I don't know. I'm not good with money. Maybe I shouldn't be a freelancer. I don't know. It's filled with weird pitfalls, and I guess they have to come because it's a dream job. So it's got to have a downside, right?
Oh my goodness.
It's too much reality for Omar. He's ready to quit comics.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, because everything you're saying is true. I am very, very blessed to be doing this for a living.
Same, exactly.
This is what I do I read comics for a living, and it was not in the cards. I'm 46 years old. I was fired from my job in 2020. I lost my job. I was a IT project manager. The money was great, and I was damn good at my job, but it was impossible for me to try to find anything that year because nobody wanted to pay me anything.
Yeah,
I was making way too much money, and when the company downsized because of the pandemic. So this is what my wife and I talked, and we started a Patreon, and it's like it's an everyday thing, and I love it. But it's also one of those things that's like, how long can I do this? How long can I keep going? And it's every day. It's every day. So whenever I talk to and this is usually, I swear to God, I know we're live right now. This is usually what I talk to creators about behind the scenes. Like I've talked to creators sometimes for a couple of hours about their daily lives. Like, what do they do? Like, and it's very similar. You know, I'm not even going to pretend to be anywhere near what you do, because you have to write so much. And you reminded me of the way that Mark Bagley was in the 80s and 90s. I always wanted to meet Mark Bagley when I was a kid. Mark Bagley never did conventions. And I remember when I finally met him a couple of years ago at Heroes Con, he was like, "Oh yeah, I never did conventions because I had to pay the bills, man. I had to draw, like, I was drawing 2 comics a month." He was like, if I go to a convention, that's taking time out of my day. I can't draw that day. I can't draw that Saturday and Sunday. I got to eat. Family's got to eat. And I was like, damn, that's what it took. Because I feel every bit of what you just said about, you know, if this is your dream, there has to be some sacrifices, right? And you live in, and it's not like living in a constant state of fear or anything like that, but it is like, it is kind of scary.
But it's exactly the thing you said. I can't tell you how many times I have said, either to myself silently or aloud to an empty room, what you just said, which is, I don't know how long I can do this. Like, how long can I maintain the plate spinning balancing act that is doing this work I love and still, like, living a life that is sustainable enough that, you know, I'm not going to end up homeless on the streets of Portland, you know? So I don't know. Everyone's making me really nervous with their, like, "Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for," I'm going to be canceled tomorrow from whatever honesty I'm saying. I don't know. I appreciate that the conversation is honest, guys. I'm glad you appreciate it. I hope you don't think I'm saying anything completely wild, though. I mean, I know I'm a little bit on the edge here, but I think this is all stuff we know about comics, don't we? They need to be more diverse. They need to pay better, but it's a dream job, and so we all take it on the chin, and we accept a lot of these things. We accept a lot of these things because it's a great job, and it makes it hard to complain about it, because you've got a dream gig that, you know, a lot of people want, but it also makes it hard to feel safe, you know?
Well, and you know, like, things happen, and things can happen at an instant. Like, we have been sharing the GoFundMe for, you mentioned it earlier, but we've been sharing the GoFundMe for one of my favorite creators of all time, and that's Peter David. Right? And Peter David was very much, I mean, was very much like you, like, very much a writer and loved what he did. And then things like that happens, and what the hell? What do you do? There's no health insurance. And I know it's like, you know, I have a lot of viewers from overseas, and that's something that was like, you know, something they didn't understand about, like, work for hire when you're contracted. It's just contract work, right? So it's, you take whatever. And part of it, because that's, I did that in my 20s. I was contract work all the way up until 26. Didn't have any insurance because I was young, right? I was like, insurance? What do I need that for? I'm fine. I'm 46 now. I'm like, insurance, sign me up for the highest one I can get that doesn't eat up my entire income, please.
There's a great old Jon Stewart joke from one of his old stand-ups that's about, he's like, you know, because, you know, when you're 25, you don't need insurance. He's like, you know, you get hit on the head at a party and you go to the doc in your flip-flops, and he's like, "Hey man, you've got a concussion." And he's like, "No man, just put a Band-Aid on it. I got to get back out to the keg." Like, he's like, but when you're in your 40s or 50s and you have, I think he's talking about like a colonoscopy or something, because the joke is, he's like, when you have ass pain, you go to the doctor immediately. And I just thought it's such a great statement between, yes, it happens to all of us. It's like your body completely changes between 25 and you're 40, whatever. And it's just a whole different game that you're dealing with. And I don't know, whatever. It's hard out there, but it's hard to complain about it being hard, because I have the dream job, and it would be easy for me to let it go. And I don't know if at this point, if I could get a job doing anything that would pay better than this, because I've spent a long time trying to be good at this job, but I do feel like I could quit and go somewhere that had health insurance and a 401k and whatever, and I could do that, and it would be a lot less stressful. But man, I don't think I'd like it very much. I get to write the Birds of Prey and my own characters and be nominated for awards. It's amazing. It's a huge part of my identity. It would be such a loss. It would be like cutting off a limb to not have that. And so I'm so grateful for it. But I'd like it to be a little easier. I'd like it to be a little easier for more people like me and other diverse groups to get in. But I don't have an answer. I wish I did. If I did, I could sell it to the highest bidder and we could fix this problem, or I just give it away so we could fix this problem. But and the problem is I don't think anyone has the answer. If it does, we'd be hearing. And it's just not how we're going. You know you're old when you wake up with a cramp in your leg.
Honesty is always good. But thank you for Barda and Cass and Birds of Prey.
Man, they're a delight, right? They are. What a nice surprise they turned out to be. I didn't know that when I started. I mean, when I put them on the book, I didn't know that was going to happen. That's my argument for why you should mix up your cast a little bit. I know everyone is mad at me for not putting Oracle immediately on the team, and there are still people who are mad at me for not putting Huntress on the team. But then if I put Huntress on the team, there will be people mad at me that I didn't put Lady Blackhawk on the team. So I'm over it. This is the team. And that's how you get something great like Barda and Cass, is smashing new characters together and seeing what happens. It was so great.
Well, I mean, even when Gail came in, right, and wrote Birds of Prey after Chuck Dixon left the book, it was like adding that third element, because it was at first it was mainly just Dinah, right? Like Black Canary hanging out with Oracle, and then Ted, Blue Beetle, would show up from time to time, and they would go on adventures. And then she added the element of Huntress. And then she said, you know what? Let's just throw in some more characters in there. And now you got something. So your version was really cool to see Barda in there. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Now okay. I don't even know if you can answer this. But was Harley Quinn your choice, or was that the editors or DC going, look, we got to put Harley Quinn on the Birds of Prey?
It was my choice. It's so funny. People who want to make that nefarious. No, it was 100% me. I mean, I'm not denying that I know she's got fans and I knew it might help our sales, but I honestly thought there was enough negativity about her also that it would probably be a wash. I put her on the team because I needed someone who would tell jokes. I did not know Barda was going to be that funny. She turned out to be quite funny, and that was great. But I knew I could write a slightly restrained Harley who was being a little more respectful of the mission, who like got that there's a kid at stake here and I'm going to tone it down. And I thought I could write that really well and really have her bring a sort of oil to the water, or water to the oil, that we needed in the book. And I think it helped. I think she was great. I was very happy for her inclusion.
This is from Matt. Thank you, Matt. Behind all the tights, capes, and gamma rays are real people who are not insulated from the complexity and strife the rest of us are. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Matt.
So I appreciate you opening up like that. I think it's really important to talk about sometimes, because there's definitely that glamour of like, wow, comic books are awesome. They kick ass, and they really are. They take us out of, dark places sometimes, and we need them in our lives. But there are people, many, many people over the years, right? And I of course, things have gotten a lot better since the days of like, well, Bill Finger, right? Like,
yeah,
my goodness. That was a tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, things have gotten a lot better. People get recognition. Could it be better? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Listen, I hope it's going to keep pushing forward. Someone in here said, like, it's a multifaceted problem and it needs a multifaceted solution. And I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's no one answer here. It's a couple problems that sort of seem like the same problem because they kind of get stacked together. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the answers. I'm not that smart. I just like the only way, I mean, sometimes people are like, how do you write this great thing? And I'm like, yeah, it's because I know the answers. That's what makes me look smart. I know the end. And then I put the things in that you need to get to the end, and that makes me look clever. But there's nothing, I'm not being clever, man. I'm one of those people who is just smart enough to know I'm an idiot. Like, how does anything work? I know what that does. I don't know how that works. Like, I mean, if everything dropped out tomorrow, I'd be in so much trouble. I don't know how anything works. I don't know how people are so smart, engineers, how they build things, how they design things. All I know about is like the interior emotions of a human. That's all I got. So all I got is twist in that little area of the heart. But I've done a lot with it, and I hope I can continue to do. Like you and I are so worried, how much longer can I do this? I hope I'm going to do it right on into my grave, and hopefully that won't be right away. Let's hope.
Be for a long time. Okay. This is coming from Kitty. Pride is the best X-Man.
Yeah.
No judgment.
Yeah.
Big question for Kelly: Kitty or Jubilee? Won't get offended, and we'll keep getting your books.
I don't know if they'll like this answer or hate this answer, but I think it honestly depends on who's writing them. There are times when I really love Jubilee. Jubilee was a little more my Kitty Pride because I came to the comics a little later and then started doing back reading. So I missed Kitty Pride really to be like my character. I think a lot of people or in the decades surrounding my age group, like in that general vicinity, like Kitty Pride is their POV character, but she just wasn't that for me. And Jubilee, I didn't super attach to Jubilee either. I attached to Rogue. Rogue was my POV character. So
yes,
it wasn't super intense for me with either of them. I like them both very much. I call Jubilee Jubes because that's what my brother and I called her when we were kids. And I call Wolverine Wolvie. I can't help it. These are my pet names.
Everybody should call him Wolvie.
Right? It's so cute.
I don't know about cute. Like a manly cute thing.
No, it's immediately emasculating, and it doesn't matter because he's Wolverine. What is he gonna do? Like, he's the most masculine guy ever. He doesn't have to care. He doesn't have to care what you call him. He can take care of business. So I think it really depends on who the writer is and maybe the artist. I'll tell you that whether I liked her being a vampire or not, when that Olivier Coipel cover debuted for the Wolverine and Jubilee miniseries with her in that black zipper bodysuit, but like still with the coat and the glasses. Mm-hmm. That was it, man. I was into it. I love that.
Oh,
yeah. I didn't really
watch X-Men 97. That's how you celebrate writing all the. When you win your Eisners and you got them all on your shelf, which I assume people do, go watch X-Men 97 to celebrate. When you come to a new book, do you have a beginning and an ending already in mind? That is a really good question. I've always wondered that because every writer is a little bit different, right? Do you have an ending and a beginning in mind, or does it just evolve?
Well, pretty much. I mean, they make you pitch now, so you've got to show the ending to the editors. They've got to know where you're going. I think sometimes you can get a little leeway, like this Birds of Prey run we're doing is sort of very atypical because really it's really one villain through this whole first 13 issues. It just presented in that first 6 issues, it seemed like Megara was the villain. But Megara was more a tool being used by this time traveling person. And then we saw in this 2-issue arc, we saw something that looked like maybe it was involving them, but it wasn't really solved. And then it was sort of ended with them going through the portal. And then like this arc is 5 issues and that'll like really resolve that bad guy and like what the deal is with that. So, in that respect, did 6 have an ending? It did. It showed us what happened with Barbara and why she wasn't involved from the jump. And it revealed some additional details there. And then it also wrapped up what was happening with Sin and Megara for whatever's going to be next with that. So it's like a soft ending there. But you pretty much have to pitch these days. I mean, and you have to pitch arc to arc. So I guess the more you're in it and the longer your run is going, like I was doing a lot less of that with Captain Marvel by the end, but like still I ended up super plotting out that Brood arc because, we wanted to make sure we nailed it for that final arc and it was big and it involved extra characters and stuff. So I think there's a little bit of a size to fit, right? It changes a little bit, but mostly, and you should plan your ending because let me tell you what, when you get lost in the woods without a map, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and you try to never go back.
I wish TV shows, some of my favorite TV shows, had started so damn well. would have stuck to the landing and followed your advice there. Now that you're working with DC Comics, what other characters from DC would you like to work with next? Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Superman.
So I'm very afraid of
Booster Gold?
Superman.
You're
I'm
afraid of
very well,
Superman?
he's so perfect and he's so powerful. And especially
Okay.
after coming off, to me, I know people want to say Captain Marvel is like a Wonder Woman equivalent, but she's much more a Superman equivalent, or maybe a Green Lantern because of the space elements. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
so I feel like I've just done 50 issues of sort of Superman-ish. So no. Supergirl, I'm super interested in, but I also think what Tom King and Abilquist have done is really incredible. Like, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near that. Wonder Woman is one of my favorite characters, so it would be Wonder Woman for sure. I don't even know why I said all the things about Supergirl and Superman. It's just Wonder Woman. It's Wonder
Just
Woman with a
Wonder
bullet.
Excellent, excellent. I would read that. I would read your Wonder Woman. I think you've got a knack for this writing. The writing, I think, pretty good at it. You know.
I had fun with her in that first arc of Birds of Prey. That Barda and Diana fight, I was very excited about getting to. I wish I'd had about 20 more pages because I would have loved to do more. But I was very happy that people were, even though some people who were mad at my use of the Amazons, I was happy that people seemed happy with the take on Wonder Woman, because I definitely would like to write her someday, and I don't want people to be like, her Wonder Woman was awful. So it's good. I was glad that went all right.
Oh, well, good. Yeah, honestly, Jet, I was thinking the same thing. Some Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. I think Kelly would be really good for that too. And you got two dudes, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Breaking boundaries. Breaking boundaries.
That's what you do. That's what you do. This is an interesting question. Do you get to pick the issue count because of the story, or do you have stories meet issue numbers? Or do they still do the thing of writing for trade? Like, do companies still do that?
Marvel does.
Marvel does. Okay. They're like 6 issues, 5 issue arcs. Is that what you're usually given?
Yeah, they don't really. Yeah, it's very restrictive in an annoying way. That said, so far DC's been a little bit chaotic in an annoying way. Like, I like that they're not being like, hey, well, you can't do that because the trade. They're like, they don't care. The trade is how big or how small it needs to be, to a point, I would guess. They didn't say that to me, but I'm sure they don't want to do like a 2 or 3 issue trade. But they don't seem to care, which I love, because that feels more organic. Marvel was very structured with it, and it sometimes chafed, but it was mostly fine. I mean, you're breaking these up into arcs anyway, so it can be a little frustrating if they're like, oh, we'd really like it to be 5 issues instead of 6, and you're like, oh, like losing 20 pages of that was brutal.
Okay.
So but I feel like if I say something that seems negative against Marvel, I don't necessarily mean it that way. I didn't always enjoy that experience, but like, they know what works for them. I mean, I know people get really mad at them sometimes, so do I, but when they're making a decision, they're usually basing that on a lot of information they're getting back. Like, that was my experience. Like, when they're making a change, that's because they're looking at the numbers, they're looking at the sales, they're looking at what's working and what's not working. And I don't really have access to that information. So it's annoying to me sometimes if they're like, oh, we'll make a 4 issue trade. And I'm like, man, that's thin. I don't like that. And they're like, yeah, well, that's what sells. Like, that's not my pay grade. I can't, who am I to tell them? So
that is really interesting. 4 issue trades. Because they do 4 issue trades, they do 5 issue trades and 6 issue trades. 4 issue, usually it's like a 4 issue miniseries. Like, for example, let's use Star. Let's go back to Star. Star, when you wrote that miniseries, was it pitched as a 4 issue miniseries?
That one was it 5 or
it was
4?
Yeah, but I was
5.
wondering if they were like, we need this to be 4.
No, I think that was the last one I did. I think that was because that was right before the pandemic. It was after the pandemic that I feel like it started. I started seeing and hearing more 4 issue trades, and they seemed more. I'm not saying they wouldn't let me do a 6 issue trade. And if we go back and look, maybe some of the Captain Marvels are, but it definitely seemed like we were trending to they want 5 or less. So that was what sort of started happening. But
okay, I was curious about like something like a mini series. Thank you so much, Silhouetted Animator. And this is a good way to kind of wrap up our interview.
Yeah, we need to talk,
we need to talk
about
about
Powerpuff Girls. That's how we started. It's
I opened it's my fault. We were going to talk about Powerpuff
no,
Girls,
it's my fault.
and then
I can't.
I went on a whole tangent about how you feel about Chris Claremont. You broke my heart, but that's okay. No, he can't be everybody's hero. Okay, no joke. My first comic ever were the Powerpuff Girls from the early aughts. I think they made 70 issues, and I own most of them still. And I ain't ashamed to admit it. That's right, baby. If you like it, that's what you like. Okay, so I have to ask, how did this come about, this new series?
I mean, Powerpuff Girls. So Nate Cosby is the editor I'm doing this with at Dynamite, and he's the guy who brought me in to do Nancy Drew. And he frequently sends me an email with like an intriguing character, and he's like, "What do you think?" And usually it's just that I'm too busy or that I can't fit it into my schedule. Because it's usually an interesting character that he sent me that I would be intrigued by or that I think I could find an angle on. But when he sent the Powerpuff Girls, I was like, shit, I don't know if I can turn that down. Like I might have to make that work because that seems really fun. And it also seems like I'm trying to push now that I'm doing more. It's Jeff, Mega Princess is out there. I believe in comics for kids. I believe it's really, really, really important to this industry. I think if you don't make new readers, we won't have any readers. I don't understand why this is so hard for people to understand. Part of the reason I did a comics experiment a few years back it's more than a few years, I guess, since I've been in comics, 10 years. It was called the Ladies Comics Project. And then later I did just the Comics Project. At first I was looking at women reading comics, but then I expanded it to everyone. But I learned fascinating things about how people process comics who haven't been exposed to them young. And I came away from that experience with a lot of new information. But the number one thing was we have to start putting comics in the hands of kids, because if they don't get this when they're young, it's very hard for them. Like it takes a person. I think you can discover comics at any time and fall in love with the medium. It's totally possible. You can be 100 or you can be 10, whatever. It totally works. But for most people, there is like a disconnect in how to read them. They're thrown by the ads. They don't understand certain things about them. But if it's like language, it's when they talk about kids being so good at languages, that the best time for kids to learn languages are when they're very young. And it's just something about how their brains process. And it's the same thing with reading. If you learn to read comics when you're little, it just always works for you. And maybe you don't love it. Maybe they're not for you. That's fine. But you understand it. I mean, there was just a joke. Do you know that show Hacks? That's on HBO. Very funny. Highly recommended. So one of the characters that's a writer and a comedian in that show, she's dating some woman who's in like, I don't know, something sounds like a CW graphic novel type of show where she's like a werewolf girl or something. And they're having a fight. And she's like, I knew you didn't read the graphic novel. And she's like, I don't know which way the boxes go. And it was like a really funny joke. But I think it's very true. I think that happens to smart grown-up people. They're intimidated by it. They don't know how to read it and they get freaked out. So we should be making really great kids comics and putting them in kids' hands. So Powerpuff Girls, here we are. It's Jeff, Mega Princess. I love this stuff. I want to do more of it. In the case of Powerpuff Girls, I'm trying really hard to make it appeal to all ages because, you know, it works that way. Powerpuff Girls was always super creative and clever. There's always a sort of secondary layer, the same way sort of Simpsons works, where, you know, if you're a kid, you just get the Powerpuff Girls story. It's fun and bright and whatever. But if you're an adult, you're reading it and you're like, oh, there's like thematic, emotional shit in here that I wouldn't have gotten if I was just a kid, but that I can appreciate. And I think for anyone not familiar with the animation or the comics, I mean, they're delightful. They're absolutely delightful. I'm sorry, the quote is gone. Your person, I don't remember their name, who said they read like 70 issues, but I was going
Silhouetted Animator that had read the whole 70 issues.
I was going through my PDFs, which are just huge PDFs full of the comics, and I was just laughing my ass off. It's truly funny stuff. It's really great. I hope mine will be as good. We'll see.
Powerpuff Girls is getting a complete series DVDs in a few. Man, you are living it up. Kelly, when does Powerpuff Girls come out? Your issues.
July. I don't know the exact date. I think it's the week before Comic-Con, though. I'm not
That's
positive.
And who's
It's
the
either
artist on the book?
Paulina Ganesha.
Okay.
And she did one of the 3 main covers, or 4. There's a connecting cover by Karen Darabont. I hope I'm saying her name right. I'm sorry, I've never said it before out loud. Leo Romero's doing some covers, and these covers are really fun. It was sort of a nightmare to put into my web store because I was prepping the files the other day. But it's like there's foil covers, there's a metal cover, there's all sorts of fun stuff. So,
I can't like. I have so many more questions, and I know I'm eating up your time, but one of the last questions I want to ask you before you go is, how did you pronounce David's name, the artist on Hawkeye?
Aja.
Interesting. I always thought it was Aja, David Aja.
Well,
but I don't know. Like, so I'm always curious if Aja.
Well, so he lives in France, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember.
You don't get out of your house, so I don't know how you.
I used to say it differently, and then at some point I came across some information that made me think it was Aja, not Aha. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. Maybe someone in the chat does. They seem to know everything.
They do. James,
someone let us know.
Right, James is saying 7/17/2024 is when Powerpuff Girls.
There we go. That's the week before.
Issue number 1.
Week before STCC.
So. Yeah. So that is coming out from Dynamite. And how many issues? Is that still a secret? I don't know if it's a miniseries. Is it going to be ongoing?
I don't know for sure. I don't think they've said.
Okay. I just want to make sure we had all the information out. I do want to thank Amy for setting this interview up. She's been awesome and helping me reach out to you, get a chance to talk to you finally after all these years of trying to find a place where I can get a hold of you and not following you like Chris Claremont following you. That makes me sound less stalkish, doesn't it? And I agree with Logan. You got to come back one day. This was great. Yes, you are always welcome back.
I'd love to come back. I'd love to come back. There's I've got a big announcement this summer.
Yeah,
and maybe a couple other big announcements, but that would be maybe in the fall or maybe late summer. So we should definitely come back when I've got my new schedule sorted out. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, once you're caught up, how about you look, when you're finished watching X-Men 97, you email me, and then we'll set something up.
I'm maybe gonna have to wait to cool off from whatever I see. I don't need another truth bombs chat on the side here.
And I'm gonna look into that Cull Deluxe Edition that I thought I saw somewhere.
I mean, listen, let's make it happen. Let's get it going.
Yeah, my connections at Image aren't as strong as my connections at Marvel, but they're better than my connections at DC. So anything is possible. Big thank you for being here. This was a great conversation and behind the scenes and very honest about some of the things that happen that not a lot of people see. So I want to thank you for that and opening up. Is it easy? Do you find it easier to talk about those things because you're using the land shark, right? So nobody can get mad at you for saying things because this is an adorable picture.
I mean, people can definitely still get mad at me, but at least I won't have to see my big fat face plastered over a bunch of news sites. It'll just be Jeff's little yelling into the phone as if
my face right next to it going, right.
I don't, because I've never done my own self. I mean, I do in like Zooms with my editors and stuff, but for public consumption, I don't ever do it. So I don't know if it makes me braver or not. I feel pretty vulnerable right now, to be honest.
Do you? No, you shouldn't be.
I feel like I'm a very honest person, and I think people respond to that. I think that's why the chat looks the way it does. But it can be difficult, just because I'm being honest. It's still my perspective. It's still my experiences. Mm-hmm. It's still all caged through my own viewpoint. And doesn't make it truth. That makes it my experience. So I feel a little I feel a little tricky sometimes about that because, you know, I'm usually trying to talk delicately about complicated stuff that includes a lot of friends and colleagues and people I respect who are not maybe the people who are in charge, or not maybe, or maybe also people who got squinched by tough stuff that we're dealing with. But it's still a beautiful industry. It's a beautiful medium, and it has a lot to offer. And I think it's got a really bright, incredible future. But, um, you know, some of that maybe has to come with, I don't know, some uncomfortable truths. I don't know. We'll see.
Uncomfortable Truths would be a good title for a for
For
the story of Kelly Thompson.
oh, for something nobody wants to read, Uncomfortable
No,
Truths. It
the
sounds terrible.
title alone could sell books. Thank you all so much for watching, and smash that like button. And if you haven't checked out a Kelly Thompson book, I hope now you know the difference between Kelly Thompson and Kelly Sue the Comic, and you go check out those books with Kelly's name. She's got Captain Marvel Omni, but she's doing Birds of Prey. She's everywhere. Powerpuff Girls coming out from Dynamite, and more importantly, this is your subs. Look, James is on top of it. Like,
Thank
that's
you,
your
James.
Substack right there.
Yeah, that is definitely the best place to find me, because I am still on social, but it's hard to keep track with everything nightmarish that's happening over on the Twitter and etc. So it is a good place. There's a free newsletter that you can sign up for, that's just like news and when things are coming out, and like basic, you know, new covers and fun stuff that comes out maybe twice a month if I'm on my game. And then the paywalled stuff is like interviews, process stuff, new comics when we have them. We don't have new ones right now, but you can read digitally both the entirety of the Cull and Black Cloak if you subscribe, because they're all up on there. So it's a lot of fun stuff. It's also like a nice community. I saw someone talking about the community here, and I agree. I have to say, I think this is one of the most successful, positive, engaged chats I've seen in one of these live streams. And I feel that way a little bit of Substack. It's maybe not as voracious, but as voluminous as this. But we have a really nice little community we've built in there that feels like a nice escape from social media.
Yeah. Well, I don't really social media. I have somebody that does it. So in case
Good.
near me condition say something stupid, I can just blame that was don't quote Omar. I didn't say that.
Maybe I'll just invent a person who runs my social media, and we'll just pretend.
Who can say you're wrong? Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And